Are the Giants wrong for not giving Brandon Crawford any sort of an offer? Quote, the bottom line, I was not wanted back by the one person whose opinion matters. So I went with a team that gave me a major league contract. Cardinals have a long history, blah, 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 blah. Bottom line is, I wanted to come back to the Giants. That was obviously the ideal situation for me. I had no playing time expectations, just to help out, be a veteran mentor for Luciano, Casey Schmidt, Tyler Fitzgerald, continue being that guy for Tyro, whoever else I could help out in that capacity. That's what I came to him with. And I was told I could earn the last spot on the roster like anyone else could as a non-roster invitee, and that was the nail in the coffin for me. That's from Brandon Crawford.
Yeah. Now, your opening question of were the Giants wrong to not offer him anything more than that? We don't know yet, and that will be TBD, to be determined. I do know this. There is a major league team that thought Brandon Crawford was worthy of a major league spot and $2 million. So is Crawford going to play well enough to earn that spot? Only time will tell. The other piece of it also for me is who's your shortstop? Because the Giants right now, to my eye, don't have a shortstop. They have some guys who might play shortstop, but they don't have a guy that you can put out there and say, you're the shortstop. If you're counting on Marco Luciano, that to me is a giant question mark for a guy who may or may not be capable enough to play shortstop at all, let alone 6 days a week. So there's two pieces to this. Is Crawford done? We're going to find out in St. Louis. And did you replace him with somebody surefire, ready to go? I don't think so.
No, but also I would argue, I know Luciano's going to, quote, get the first chance. There's also Casey Schmidt. There's Tyler Fitzgerald. Tyro can play games at short if needed. Matt Chapman can play them in a pinch. Is he on the team
Matt Chapman.
Anyway, right? Like, there are options there. I don't think they're all in on Luciano. Okay, here's Farhan's response, because this was brought to him. This idea of like, hey, Brandon was willing to play in a reduced role, he says. So what about that claim? Here's Farhan's response. Quote, that assessment is 100% fair. He had interest in coming back and was open to a different role. Here's the key. Lean in to the speakers and listen to this one. The main thing we've discussed internally was the challenge of the fit, because his status in the organization would actually make this supportive mentorship role challenging for him, even with the best of intentions. You buy that?
No.
Why not?
I mean, you're telling me that he can't be a mentor because he is such a big presence in the organization? So he's going to come in and he's going to still want to be DJ BC Raw, and he's not going to be able to sublimate his ego and be able to play the role and coach up a young player? Oh,
I don't think he's saying that at all.
Well, what's he saying?
He's talking saying about everybody else. He's not talking about Brandon.
He's talking about the fans.
And teammates. Like, Brandon Crawford is royalty in the Giants organization.
Right.
He's royalty. So imagine if Luciano now, right, this is a hot shot rookie that we've been hearing about for 4 years. He goes out there and a month into the season, he's batting $162, right? What the hell is going to happen? Is he going to get space? Is it going to feel to fans and maybe more importantly teammates like Brandon Crawford is being disrespected, despite the fact that Brandon may come out and even publicly be, no, we're good here, we're good here. Like, I think that's a pretty fair response, but let me also take it a step further. I mean, what did Brandon hit last year? $170?
$190 something.
$190, $180?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, here's one thing. Here's an example. This is what I'll say, okay? Plenty of people have complained this year about Klay Thompson. They have used the word washed. They have used the phrase, it's time to move on. Living in the past. I know that he's an all-time great, but, and then they fill in the blank. If that same person then, let's say the Warriors at the end of the year just let Klay walk, and that same person was like, dude, how you going to treat a legend like this? How are you going to do that? That's what this feels like. I don't think anybody was like, you've got to bring back Brandon Crawford. Brandon Crawford's 37 years old and failed to get to the Mendoza line last year. And I understand he's talking about a reduced role, and that's great. And would you love to have him around? I understand that. However, look at all the names we're sitting here talking about. Like, whose roster spot do you want that to be? Do you want that to be in favor of a young guy who you are interested in looking at and fans are always clamoring for?
Right.
Let's give another guy. Let's give a Kuminga, a Moody, a Luciano, a Fitzgerald, a Schmidt. Give them some time and let's see what they can do. Are you going to give one of those guys the roster spot because he's Brandon and you want him to just kind of hang out and talk to people? I don't know.
Well, he might be better than those people, and we don't know how he's going to play. Last year was a bad year, and he had a ton of injuries. And if he's healthy and he feels like he can give it one more go, St. Louis seems to think that he can. And I'm sorry, but outside of Luciano, Casey Schmidt, we've seen, and yeah, you want to give him time, and let's give Fitzgerald some time, and Luciano, and let's piecemeal it with 3 young guys. You're not looking to win. Then it's just another rebuild before the inevitable rebuild. Not that Brandon Crawford's the difference between an 80-win team and a 90-win team, but are you trying to win, or are you just trying to look at these 4A players again?
No, you're trying to win. But to
me, you have no answer at shortstop. And Brandon Crawford, at least, at the very least.
Why do you feel that way?
I don't think Marco Luciano can play shortstop. I don't think that he is.
And that opinion is based on what?
Many experts that I've been reading their reports, guys who know a lot more about baseball than I do, they don't think that he fits as a shortstop in Major League Baseball.
I get that a lot of people think he projects in his career
as an outfielder
or even a third baseman.
Right.
He's got a very, very big body. A-Rod came up as a shortstop. He did not project out there at the end.
Yeah.
He went over to third base. That could happen. But at least take a look.
Sure.
Before we, even if a bunch of experts think that, like a bunch of experts thought that Trace Jackson Davis wasn't even worth a draft pick. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what you're saying, but I don't see a real path toward a future for any of these guys at shortstop. Casey Schmidt is a guy who we saw a lot of last year, and he was overmatched. So is he going to, right?
A lot of people are overmatched.
Sure. Is he going to make the adjustment and come back and be able to, is he going to be a better hitter this year? Is he a guy who's going to hit 260, 270?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's
guys get better. Like you got to, right? You got to see it. I'm not going to go on MLB.com's opinion and be like, so he can't do it.
Shortstop's a big time position.
Luciano's a big time prospect.
So you've got your shortstop position is 3 prospects and Ahmed if he makes the team. Big question mark to me.
No question it's a question mark.
Wouldn't it be good to have a veteran there who could maybe mentor these guys? And I don't buy Farhan's excuse or his reason that, based on his track record and his personality, it wouldn't be the right fit. He would know better than I would, but that to me sounds like a cop-out. It's the way I hear it.
What if the Giants' internal evaluation is he's done? He's 37. He's been hurt constantly. He's done.
Well, that's what it is, because they offered him just a minor league. Show up and try out is what they offered him.
So then I would take issue with you calling it a cop-out, because it would be beyond offensive to come out and say we just didn't feel like he could play anymore.
Well, that wouldn't be offensive. That'd be keeping it real. Keep it real, Farhan.
Stop. Don't say that.
St. Louis obviously thinks that he's got something left.
St. Louis is giving him $2 million to be the same thing that the Giants are doing with a Nick Ahmed, if you will.
But the Giants wouldn't even have done that for Brandon Crawford.
Right. Because their assessment is that he's done.
Right.
And I don't think that's a crazy assessment. It's not a crazy assessment, but they certainly my gosh, what you're suggesting would be, quite frankly, the most disrespectful thing an organization has ever done to one of its great players ever. To just come out and be like, yeah, we don't think he can play anymore.
Be honest.
Stop.
Based on his personality, and we don't think that the mentorship, because of the, all the double talk that he said, I do think that.
You think they should publicly say, we think Brandon Crawford's done?
Or you could just say, we have other options that we're looking at, and, you could say something more than.
I think that's what they said.
What he said was, we don't know if he would fit based on, what a great legacy and all the rest of it. I just don't think that is. I don't think that that's very truthful. I think what they really wanted to say is what you're saying. We don't think he's very good anymore.
Right, and they can't.
Okay.
They cannot say that. That would be awful. You want them to say that? You want the
I don't want him to say what he said.
If Klay Thompson shoots 25% from three for the rest of this year and the Warriors let him walk, you want that statement?
The actions will speak louder than the words. I don't want him to say, well, we don't want to bring back Klay because we feel like, his presence here would be a distraction. And I think that that's nonsense. It's my opinion.
I think you'd never get a PR job.
Well, I'm not fishing for a PR job.
But how would you suggest that somebody say that publicly in this position? And how would you think that that's not way worse to Brandon? I mean, at least he went and got a different gig.
Right.
I would be absolutely blown away if an organization, after how many years was Brandon with the team? 13 years?
12, yeah, something like that. 13
this
years.
Guy's a forever Giant. I mean, my God, and you would come out publicly and just be like, we don't think he can play anymore.
Well, that's basically what they're saying without saying it.
Which is the right thing to do.
This is what Brandon is saying.
Which is the right thing to do.
Brandon's comment is, they didn't, it was pretty clear the one guy who had a chance to keep me around didn't want me around. That's what Brandon said. So,
yeah.
Whether or not the club says it or not, the club did it. So it doesn't matter if you say it or not.
Yes, it does.
The club basically said, we don't want you here. That was their action. So the words that Farhan chose, it's nonsense.
Matter.
Well, they matter in that it's nonsense.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Boy.
I mean, yeah.
So
we don't want him here because he'd be a distraction because he's...
Didn't use that word.
Read it again.
Did not call him a distraction.
Read it again.
The main thing we've discussed internally was the challenge of the fit because his status in the organization would actually make this supportive mentorship role challenging for him, even with the best of intentions. I actually don't question his intent or that he would do everything he could to mentor our young players and help bring them along. I just think we expect our younger players will have their ups and downs as young players do, and having the greatest shortstop in franchise history on the bench, it was just going to create a dynamic where it was going to be harder for our young players to play with a margin of error.
Because they've got a 13-year, he'd be a 14-year veteran over their shoulder.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Brandon flipping Crawford. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean...
I don't buy that.
Did we not say this about Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo last year?
Well, that's a different story.
Or Trey Lance, for that matter.
Well, Trey, those are totally different stories.
How so?
Jimmy was a distraction because Jimmy clearly didn't want to be here and they didn't want him here. And the only reason why he was still here is because they were painted into a corner and they had no other option other than to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. This is not that.
That's one way to say
this
it.
This is a forever Giant and a beloved Giant.
I don't agree with you that they didn't have any other option.
Well, they got to a point where they weren't sure if Brock was going to be back, and then they knew that they didn't want to have Trey, so they had to have Jimmy.
No. They knew that they didn't have Brock back. This was prior to Brock Purdy ever even making the team.
Right.
Brock had not played yet.
You had no quarterback.
You had Trey Lance.
You had no quarterback.
They didn't think that.
I think that they did think that.
We didn't think that.
I thought so.
Yeah, well, I called it a hedge that day and got absolutely torched for it.
You were spot on.
Well, but
and I don't believe I torched you. You were right on the money.
Not you, but how many people said wow, that's not. I mean, I said that. That's not great for Trey Lance.
No.
That's why I knew it was a hedge.
Right.
Because you don't go all in on someone and then keep their very famous backup sitting there. That's unnecessary pressure.
And this would be a hedge.
Absolutely.
And they need a hedge.
Well, that's my opinion. That's a fair opinion. But I think that what he's saying is also fair. If you really want to let Luciano have some space, you don't sign Brandon Crawford to hang out on his shoulders.
And help him. Help him learn the position.
Help him.
Right.
And put pressure on him.
Well, what's wrong with a little pressure? I mean, honestly, if the kid's not ready to be a shortstop, then go down to AAA. You got to win baseball games.
I think the job of a team is to put their players in the best position to succeed. That's what I think. And I don't think that would have been it.